part of it is COVID related, but a lot of it right now has been just a mass exodus from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, California, and the direct recipients of that exodus. And then the in-migration for us is Florida and Texas predominantly, and Florida more so.
You're listening to the Real Estate Sessions. I'm your host, Bill Risser. Listen in as I interview leaders in our industry, getting their stories and their journeys to the world of real estate. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 251 of the Real Estate Sessions podcast. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for telling a friend. Today, I get to talk to somebody who is doing some wonderful stuff right here in St. Petersburg, my new town. And I'm very excited. John Barkett Realty, has an incredible background, right? Not only the highest designation of appraisal, right, MAI, he also is a commercial broker and started a residential brokerage as well. So he's got this great knowledge of what's happening in this market, as well as just a great perspective on a lot of different things in our industry. So I'm really excited to have him on the show. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it very much. Good to be here.
Really excited. I mean, you have, I love talking to local people on the podcast because this is where I live. This might be my forever home. So it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of figure out what's in the future, because with your commercial and residential expertise, we're going to have some fun. But first, we got to start with where you grew up. I love finding out about people, right? What can I find out about John? And as I did my research, Southern Massachusetts near Springfield, that's where you grew up. And all I know about that area, because I grew up in San Diego, I couldn't be farther from you. But all I know is that the National Basketball Association has a Hall of Fame there. What else should I know about where you grew up?
I guess that's good research to start. Yes, I grew up in a town called Longmeadow, Massachusetts. Population of a whopping 15,000 that was incorporated in 1649. It still has a town green. It's right on the Connecticut River Valley. We actually grew up right on the Connecticut border, and we were really surrounded by academia. So Amherst College, Smith College, UMass, Mount Holyoke, the Seven Sisters as they're called, are all there. And then we're equidistant from pretty much between Boston, New York, and Providence. So, it was an interesting place to be, and almost growing up like in a time warp.
I've been back to Boston now on trips. I've been through Massachusetts. So you had those like graveyards where you do have tombstones that say 1600.
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Our history classes were, we were learning about, the Native Americans and Tecumseh, and then you're going by those actual locations and places. The Revolutionary War, it's all happening in your backyard.
I think Massachusetts. So my first thought is you're going to be like a whole Boston fan, 17 championships in the last 15 years, all that stuff. But sometimes people are a rebel and they go, you know what? Everybody else was Boston. I went with the Yankees.
Oh, yeah, we were a split household for sure. I will say my father was a season ticket holder with the Patriots when they used to play at Harvard Stadium before they built Foxborough. But that being said, my grandfathers and my father were Yankees fans. My father worked in downtown Hartford, Connecticut. We were lucky enough to be Hartford Whaler fans on the hockey side. So we really were a mixed bag, which meant that, I always had an argument if I wanted one, because there's no shortage of, people riding the bus and the bandwagon as far as, Red Sox, Bruins, and Patriots diehard. So it was an oddity. I will say that it's, we live in an amazing location, and a lot of people don't realize it didn't grow up in areas that are extremely competitive and where it's really, really hard to get to a sporting event, even to get a ticket, let alone to get a good seat at a sporting event, number one. And number two, the Rays and the Lightning, not only is it a really good fan experience, but they put out an amazing product. we really are blessed in that regard. And then, not to rub salt in the wounds, it sounds like you're not a Patriots fan. At least, the good thing is we've also got Brady and Gronk, and with the Super Bowl coming to Tampa. So I couldn't be happier right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm a big football fan, big baseball fan as well. We worked in both sports, and I think sometimes expectations a little bit high on what Brady and Gronk can do, but man, it's going to be fun until reality gets here. We'll see how it goes.
Absolutely agreed.
You end up going to school in Massachusetts. Were you thinking about real estate already? I mean, I always wonder because so many people, this is a second career, sometimes third,
Yeah,
that.
no, absolutely, without a doubt. I was actually exposed to real estate at a young age. My father was the chief appraiser for HUD and FHA, building affordable low-income housing across the Northeast, basically. And when Reagan was downsizing government and offering early outs, my father took his retirement after 28 years of service, including his military time, and then started his own real estate appraisal company. So I used to work for my father summers as basically an appraiser intern when I was in high school. And that's back in the day before computers, before fax machines, where you would have to go to the property appraiser's office and you would literally have to pull physical property record cards. You would go to the counter, you would take your pen and fill out a form and give them the property addresses. And it used to be that you could only pull 3 cards per day. Well, when you appraise a property, you could need five properties just to appraise, one piece of real estate. So it took my father a little while. He's like, "How are you getting so much done?" He couldn't figure it out. And what I was doing was taking my friends with me and buying them lunch so that they could all help me pull property record counts down at the property appraiser's office. But I had an idea. I liked the flexibility of it. And then on the commercial side, I really like the fact that you are getting to see how people make a living. You get to see a lot, but it is a profession that typically, and even more so on the analytical side, people don't really, they kind of stumble into it after the fact, maybe working in another line of work, and then they get into it. I'm second generation and was brought into it at a really young age.
Let's talk about your grad work in the city. First of all, just living there has got to be an amazing experience. But you stayed for a while. Let's talk about, first of all, what your area of focus was at school. And then what did you do afterwards?
Yeah, I think, well, like I said, I did in undergrad. I went to undergrad and studied business management because I knew I wanted to run my own business first and foremost. And those were skills that were going to transfer over into anything that I did. Immediately upon graduation, I already knew that I wanted to go to NYU and get into their program. I wasn't accepted immediately when I left. I packed up everything I owned 3 weeks after I graduated from Western New England College and moved to New York City and affiliated myself with a member of the Appraisal Institute because I knew that I wanted to get the highest designation that I could get in that profession. And then I applied to New York University's program in real estate valuation and analysis. So that's what got me there. I was working probably 60 hours a week and going through NYU's program nights and finished that program in about 3 years. But I stayed in New York for 9, and being in New York City in the early 90s in your 20s, I would not trade that experience for anything. It was spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. Where did I always curious, where'd you live?
God, where didn't I? I puddle jumped. I lived in Brooklyn before it was really cool and hip. It was actually, it could be described as a scary place, but it was an amazing experience. And then I puddle jumped over Manhattan and lived in Hoboken for 2 years. And then the rest of my 9 years, I was right in the East Village on 12th Street and 3rd Avenue, right next to the original Keels and 2 blocks away from my favorite farmer's market in Union Square.
Wow. That's great. I've been there a handful of times, and it's just an amazing place. I couldn't imagine living there. It's a whole different world, especially when you grew up in a suburb in Southern California.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I was lucky enough to also experience, I had an opportunity 9 years into my run. I had attained my national designation, and I had an opportunity to totally switch gears and go out to the West Coast. And I did live in the Bay Area for 2 years, and that it it's magical. But growing up in the Northeast, it's a completely different pace and mindset. And I love St. Pete. I mean, I really feel like I'm in the absolute right place for myself and my family. And I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere on the planet at this point. I'm 21 years now in St. Pete.
So let's continue down that path. How do you get to St. Pete? What was that decision? What's it like? You had a family, I think, at the time when you made that move?
I did. I was starting a family. I was engaged in living in Marin, so I was in Sausalito and engaged. And my parents had relocated here from Massachusetts prior, so my parents had been here for 4 years, and I really wanted, my children to grow up having the experience of being close to their grandparents. I'm 100% Lebanese. I grew up in a 2-family home with my grandparents on the second floor, and some of my fondest memories as a kid are running up the back stairs, and my grandmother cooking, and letting me taste the food and help her season it before the rest of the family got to eat. So I really wanted to have my family be close to my parents if I could.
Yeah, that's great. So you get here, you start your own company, correct?
That is correct. I started on the analytical side of the house, and within a year, we were operational with property valuation specialists out of the Green Richmond Arcade building, which is west of the State Theater on Central Avenue.
Wow. That's, I live up 2 blocks from Central, so it's always
Nice.
fun the history of that street. We could have a whole another episode just to talk about some of those buildings, which would be spectacular. Our primary audience is realtors, and I have an appraiser for the very first time on the podcast. I want to talk about, first of all, sometimes you get yelled at, and sometimes people get upset. And sometimes they're probably super happy, but talk about, just you have to be this neutral third party. I mean, lenders depend on you to be accurate. I would think, hopefully consumers and agents would think the same way, that you want to be accurate. But let's talk about that dynamic.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wear both hats. I'm a broker, and we do also, we assist clients with selling and buying residential property as well as commercial, but we also, on the analytical side, assist lenders, attorneys, CPAs on the valuation side. And I'm also an expert witness both in district and federal court. So yes, you are third party and you do need to be non-biased. I will say that wearing a broker's hat as well as being an appraiser helps me be a better appraiser, I will say, because there's a lot of, especially on the residential side of the house right now, there's a lot of disgruntled agents in the market at this particular moment dealing with appraisals that are coming in. And I'm not talking about $5,000. I'm talking about like a $30,000 swing on an FHA loan. And it's a deal killer. And the unfortunate part of it is, sometimes it can be navigated. You can catch it on the front end. I always tell my residential agents that they absolutely, come to the valuation side of the house, talk to our in-house residential appraisers, get your comps, because comps aren't just data, black and white data that you pull from the county property appraiser's office and, hey, this is my price per square foot and this is where I should be. There's a whole verification process. There's a story with every sale. And unfortunately, a lot of the residential appraisal work is being doled out by these large scale appraisal management companies, or AMCs. And I'm seeing it like every week. I'm getting calls. We get a lot of work just from doing second appraisals that are called for because the appraiser that was called in has a geographic competency issue, which is huge. You really, really need to know your market and have your finger on the pulse as an appraiser, or you're doing a disservice. And a lot of people that are coming in, unfortunately, that are doing some of this residential appraisal work, may not be qualified from a geographical perspective. And then I always also, tell my agents that they need to be at the appraisal. at the appraisal inspection when the appraiser comes into the home on the residential side of the house. And they need to be presenting data. And it's not, they're not forcing anybody to do anything, but they're saying, hey, this is the data that we utilize to come up with this list price. Here's why we used it. Here's what we know about these sales that we found out from verification. Here's that contact information. Please do your homework. Please do your work. We're not trying to unnecessarily influence you in any direction. This is why we feel this is market. And I feel that unfortunately that doesn't always happen. And then it's a big shock to everybody when the appraisal comes in, $20,000, $30,000 below contract.
What would you say to an agent who's thinking about meeting the appraiser but doesn't know how to handle that interaction? There's got to be some the right way and the wrong way.
Appraisers don't mind getting data. Honestly, we are, we're data fanatics. So the more the merrier. For me, it's a little different for me or my agents in my brokerage at Barkett Realty, because they're able to leverage in-house valuation services. So the appraisers already know that the comps have been selected by an actual licensed appraiser, or in some instances an MAI. So they're going to have to think long and hard about discrediting those sales or not utilizing those sales and or listings that become sales. But I would say to agents that you really should take a couple classes on appraisal to understand it, because education is empowering. And it's one thing to just say, well, I can test the value, but it's another thing to be able to speak the language. And it's not rocket science. It really is. It's some simple methodology, but understanding how an appraiser makes adjustments in the residential world is an excellent tool for a realtor to really be able to assist their clients. And then have an affiliation with an appraiser. If you don't have appraisal services in your brokerage, which is an extreme rarity to have, affiliate with somebody and see if you can't start to pick up those skills in some way, shape, or form, because it'll really help, especially in a market like today.
Yeah, you talk about unique. Let's talk about Barkett Realty. First of all, you have an appraisal business going. I imagine things are good, and then you decide you want to be a broker.
Take me through a whole bunch of reasons. I started in sales, real estate sales, back in New York City 30 years ago. But I really didn't have the desire to open the brokerage until being here in St. Pete. And probably after about 6 or 7 years, a lot of my clients were really, really pushing me to get into the business, because they absolutely already relied on my opinions from a value perspective or my modeling capabilities for future returns, but they wanted a more full service boutique shop. So we started to do the research and take a look at what brokerages were out there that had valuation services, and they really didn't exist. The only ones really that do are the major institutional Cushmans, but they're not necessarily working with the properties that we like to work with. We really kind of pride ourselves on building districts. So it morphed into the transactional side, and then from there on the transactional side, as the market got really, really competitive on the investment front, I have some really amazing clients who love the returns that we get doing what I do for myself personally, which is like adaptive reuse of older commercial buildings, potentially with residential on top. And the only way to do that was also to then by proxy build a Beta Gulf property management. So what we've developed over time is a full service residential and commercial boutique brokerage that started with a firm footing in valuation and analytics.
Yeah, you are so far away, and I'm not going to mention any companies, but the dreaded residential agent that kind of hangs out there.
Yeah.
You were trying to solve for that and not be that, right?
Well, that's correct. I mean, you need to do what you do well, but you can build. I could build the firm knowing what knowing what those downfalls are and playing to what my clients really need. We do have a lot of crossover clients. I do have a lot of clients that play, in both the commercial space and the residential space, and they wanted to keep the relationship here with Barkett. So we've now, surrounded ourselves with some amazing residential agents and technology, and we constantly are going through that process to, continue to better our services. And when I build the brokerage, yes, it's for the clients, but I'm also, have a keen eye on what am I putting out there and what are we providing that's above and beyond for the agents, because you also need to be able to, to get agents to want to be a part of your team. And I've been blessed. I've been here for 20 years. I've got agents that are crossover agents that have been trained, that are now licensed certified general appraisers, and they are now licensed agents, and they are absolutely phenomenal for my clients to be able to have that resource at their fingertips. It doesn't really exist out there. And my clients know, as does the market now, know that when my clients put an offering memorandum out and they look at a pro forma, they know that the numbers are based on reality. So we're not wasting anybody's time. And it's all about time right now, especially in the market today.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned adaptive reuse. Let's start with your building. Wonderful space. I love what you did.
Thank you very much. Our building is at 615 9th Street North, or MLK North, here, right next to, in between Banyan Coffee, what was Banyan Coffee, which is now Uptown Eats, which is opening next week. And we're super excited. And Nova 535 to the south. This building is it was a two-story dilapidated building. It was probably the biggest dive bar in St. Pete. It used to be called Molly's, which is probably before your time, Bill. But after that, it was called Game Bar, and it was equally not so nice. It was stale beer, cigarette smoke, and people cashing their disability checks at the beginning of the month. And by the end of the month, unfortunately, it was not pretty. We absolutely gut renovated the building and built a gorgeous brokerage out of the 3,600 square feet on the ground floor, and then renovated 4 loft apartments on the second floor. And we actually, 2019, we won the Adaptive Reuse Award by Preserve the Burg, which was really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's a beautiful space.
Thank
Anyone
you.
listening locally, swing on by, stop in, say hi.
Please.
It's a great place.
Yeah, we built it. It's I really gravitate towards agents that are influencers. I want my agents to be influencers in the community. So, and I'm not, it's not specific. I'm not saying, hey, just because I do all this work with the chamber and other organizations, that doesn't mean that my agents need to be, although I provide that for them as a service and free membership to all my agents. But I just feel like you have to be part of the solution.
We're recording this episode in August of 2020. 2020. What an amazing year. And I want to get your take. I can tell you, the things that I know from the title side, we have been busier since May, June, and July. It is unbelievable how busy we are. It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to turn to you and say, what are we seeing here? Now, I know inventory is going to be a massive issue here quickly. It already is. But give me your take on what we're seeing here in St. Pete and really a lot of places around the country.
Well, inventory is huge. We have no supply. We really don't. What we've been building in the downtown core has been a whole lot of luxury residential rental, but not a lot of condo stacks, other than the one, and Coulter now is doing round 2 with Saltaire and that site. But we really, the water's just been building behind the dam. And part of it is COVID related, but a lot of it right now has been just a mass exodus from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, California, and the direct recipients of that exodus. And then the in-migration for us is Florida and Texas predominantly, and Florida more so. And if you look at all the things that we have to offer in quality of life, and having lived in New York and having lived in California, these are areas where, unfortunately, these people are just sick and tired of being overtaxed. And there's a whole bunch of factors that also go into it, but that's one of the main ones. And it just came out in a press release this morning with the founder of the Red Apple Group that's building the 41-story tower. The thrust of the story was he really feels that he's going to sell the bulk of his units to people from New York and New England. And I don't doubt it for a minute. Now I'm seeing it even more so that the beaches are as tight as they've ever been right now. And there's really no new product to speak of. And it's not going to get any better that I can see, in the short term. And there's no shortage of money, cash, even not non-finance deals. There's no shortage of people that want to put their stake in the ground, whether they're going to move here right now or not, and get that house that, they can eventually put their boat in the backyard or get their toes on the sand in a condo. And, couple that with absolute historic lows in interest rates and loan product, and it's like a perfect storm right now. And that's really what we're seeing is that and we've got people in their late 20s that have never owned a house, that have always been renters. They finally feel like it's not, they may not come right out and say it's a buyer's market, but they finally feel like it's not necessarily a seller's market and that it's time for them to buy. And we've placed a lot of clients that way into some really great homes here in downtown St. Pete.
Pinellas County, just by and large, there's not a whole lot of places left to develop, right? I mean, we're kind of done, but there's like Pasco, they're killing it. I mean, it's amazing stuff happening up north. But for Pinellas, there is one big giant piece of land that I think everybody's looking forward to, 2027 and beyond. Can you talk a little bit about the whole Trop and
I can. I'd say there's two large swaths of land that we have right now in the downtown core, with different challenges, but they are absolutely amazing opportunities. I just had I probably have at least one, or not, if not two Zoom calls a week in relation to the Trop site now that the RFP has gone out by the city. I mean, this is a once in a lifetime. Tropicana Field redevelopment site is a once in a lifetime opportunity for the city to really get it right and, design an amazing mixed use facility. And they've got a whole bunch of items on their wish list. Convention center, which we need something in that regard. Hotels are starting to come, but hotel space, office space for sure. Having a park component on Booker Creek, but right now that's 2027 from the raise timetable perspective. And the question right now still is it going to be 86 acres that we redevelop, or is it going to be 56 acres that gets redeveloped? And then the remainder, the northeast quadrant, would be, the northeast quadrant would then be the park, the new home of the raise. And figuring out, what do we do with structured parking if the rays do stay? Because that's part of the quandary with the way that the agreement with the rays is written as to what they have the rights to. And it also has to do with how many parking spaces they have now and what you give them in return and what they get for the development rights moving forward. But it's an absolute once in a lifetime opportunity. The city's been doing a great job as of late in listening to everybody, to listening to the business owners, to listening to the developers, to listening to our residents, our shopkeepers, in that regard, and to how it transforms the Trop site. And it's still evolving, but I think some of the great things are going to be, some of the subtle things are going to be the extension of the grid pattern, the dropping of 175 to include the Campbell Park to the south and to include Midtown. I mean, we really need to do a better job traffic wise. We're doing national traffic studies now on 8th and 9th Streets North to change directional traffic from one way to two way. And the same with 3rd and 4th, because what it's doing right now is it's stopping growth southbound. And we really, that's something that also needs to be addressed, because that area before it was Tropicana Field and gobbled up was a large, vibrant African-American community in St. Pete. And it's all, it all needs to be taken into consideration. This needs to be something that's developed for everybody.
Yeah. It's really going to be fun to watch that whole process. I mean, for me, just seeing one go up, we moved here, one was at 10 stories, right. and then watched it go up. And just recently, the new pier, I never saw anything but a whole bunch of pilings when I was here at the beginning, but to watch that thing be built, it's been some amazing things that are happening here. So,
right. Well, there's no shortage of institutional development interest in our market. The pandemic has not slowed down the big boys from wanting to be here in St. Pete, and for good reason. It's an amazing development climate. They don't see a slowdown in the demand. If anything, it's a matter of, again, the city listening. And when I say the city's listening, I mean that we've got our 2050 plan that will be voted on. A lot of the changes to the land development code will be voted on within the next year and a half. That's huge. That's our roadmap, and that's how we control development and growth. And that's going to be what our city looks like 20 years from now. So it's got to be done right. But one of the things they did within the Trop site, when they tweaked DCC and DC1 zoning in and around the downtown core to start dealing with potentially loosening parking requirements, as an example, for apartment units that are smaller than 750 square feet, or saying, okay, Mr. Developer, if you build office space greater than 25,000 square feet in either of those zones, any square footage above that 25,000 square feet does not count towards your floor area ratio, which is your development envelope. It's what you can build, either as of right or streamlined. And then what they did that was really, really smart was they looked at the Trop site and said, we're already making these tweaks. Let's not wait. Let's get ahead of the game. And they went back in and said, okay, we're going to change the as of right height in that area from 125 feet to 300 feet. And if you want to go to a streamlined FAR process, which there's certain things that you need to do to get there, then we will allow you to go to 375 feet. That's 30, basically wow. 37 stories. That's a huge change from 125, because at the previous height allowances, it was 125 feet as of right and 150 feet streamlined. So if you don't understand necessarily the FAR concept, I don't mean to throw out acronyms, it means it's floor area ratio. So if you have a lot that is, let's say it's a 10,000 square foot lot, and you can build it as of right, means you don't need any variance, any approval, anything. Predominantly in those zones, your as of right FAR is a 3.0, which means you can build 30,000 square feet of building. If you go for a streamlined approval, you can bump that up to a 5 FAR, which means you could build a 50,000 square foot building. But then in my previous example, if 50,000 square feet is the biggest building that you can build, if I go in and I build, as long as I can park it within my box, if I build 26,000 square feet of office, that 26,000 square feet doesn't count towards the 50,000 square feet that I'm allowed to build. And that's a really, it's something to understand when you start to hear people talk about FAR and streamlined process. We need office space. We haven't built a new office building in downtown St. Pete since like 1984. And I will say that Larry and Mac Feldman have done an amazing job of taking what I would call Class B in any other market offices and bring them up to as close as you can get to a Class A office
Right.
while dealing with something that was built in 1984. So they put a lot of money into their buildings, into their common areas and improving the amenities. But at the end of the day, we still got a bunch of Class B buildings that we look at in the greater market of Tampa Bay as Class A. So if we are going to be able to sustain, right now we've got just in and around the Edge District as an example, because I've been helping build the Edge District for the last 7 years. But in and around the Edge District, by us going through adaptive reuse and making it really cool and hip and walkable, what we've done is we've also amassed land as a self-fulfilling prophecy to bring in vertical developers, because you can make it all cool, but it can't be people that are just driving in. It's got to be walkable, and it's got to be local walkable. And that's kind of the rub. So I just think you got to keep an eye on that, because from a sustainability perspective, the people that want to live downtown and eat downtown, they don't want to get in the car in the morning and have to drive to Gateway or to Tampa and then come back. What they really want to do is live and work in the same area. And then the question is, post-pandemic, what is office space going to look like? Office isn't going to go away. Companies are going to continue to relocate here. What you're going to see is that a lot of the really savvy multifamily developers are going to start, and we're already seeing it on a couple of large projects that we're working on that are on the west end of the Trop site. What you're going to see is more co-working lab space that's not open to the public, but it's up on a raised amenity deck. So you may rent a 2-bedroom apartment, and then as an amenity, you have the ability to pay a monthly fee and have a super cool WeWork space that's not open to the public, but it's just open to your community, your building. And that's what you're going to see. And why I say that is that when rents are between $2.75 a foot a month and $3.25 a foot a month, you don't want to have to pay for an extra bedroom just to use it as your office. And you don't want to be in your house all day. It's the same argument that people want to send their kids to school, because you want to be social, but you want to be safe. So what is that delicate balance? And I think that what we're going to see is, we're still going to have companies that want 25,000 square foot floor plates of Class A office space, but they're also going to allow the flexibility of people to work from their home. And I think that developers in all verticals, meaning multifamily, office, they need to be cognizant of that and offer it up. And that's what we're going to see.
I love you breaking that down for us. Yeah. One, we don't really have a lot of commercial people on the episode. Mm-hmm. So a lot of realtors, especially here locally in St. Pete, need to listen to that maybe 2 or 3 times just to kind of get a sense of what's coming. It's very important.
Well, it parlays over to residential. You're going to start to see it because we are on the cusp right now of condo development, because it's been predominantly, and that's the way our cycles go. We start with the low-hanging fruit, and it's luxury multifamily, and then we'll start to see more infill. Then we will see affordable. Which is that could be a whole nother 2-hour conversation about affordable workforce housing. But you're going to start to see a similar push on amenities even into the condo world, which will parlay into residential. And it's what our buyers and sellers want to live near. That the office is, you can't not take into consideration where somebody's going to work when you're selling them a home.
John, this has been great. But I'm out of time. I want to honor your time commitment. I had asked for half an hour, but I have to end it with the same question I've asked every single guest, and that is, if you could give one piece of advice to a new agent just getting started, what would it be?
I would say that our motto is turning transactions into relationships, and I would say live it. But I would also say you need to be an influencer. It's not just a process. It's not about getting to the closing table. You're creating long-lasting relationships, and you need to look at it as if you're going to be here forever, and these are relationships that you're going to have forever. But you need to be a part of your community and a part of the solution. We live in a community that wants your input, and your input makes change, and you can see it. I've spent the last 2 years working with the city to build a park down the street from our office on MLK between 4th and 5th Avenues North. And we've now gotten funded outside of the city budget with not a penny coming from the budget. We've got almost $500,000, and that starts in September. But if you're not a part of the process, you're never going to get there. And also that knowledge is power. I mean, knowing what's happening when and where is what's going to make you a better agent and be able to find the right location for your buyers and to market your sellers' homes, in a more productive manner. I just think it's something to live by, and my agents all do it. We love it.
It's funny you mentioned the community aspect and how you can make a change. You can be a force of change. That's exactly what Stefan Swanpol said last week in episode 250.
Nice.
He brought that same topic up. So I love the fact that you guys are right on point together. John, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
First of all, we're at 615 9th Street North. Come on by and check out what we've done and what we've got here. It's really unique, and we're really proud of it. So yes, we are practicing CDC guidelines, but everybody is more than welcome. And our website is barkettrealty.com, and they can feel free to call me, 727-510-7106. I'm available for people. If you have questions on the appraisal side, our appraisal company is Property Valuation Specialists. If you need management support, it's Beta Gulf Property Management. And we're all here at Barkett Realty. So we're here wearing a bunch of hats, 7 days a week. So if somebody needs us, feel free to reach out. We're all in this together.
John, thank you so much for your time. It really was a wonderful conversation. I mean, this is exactly the kind of stuff I need to deliver locally.
No, thank you for including us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Sessions podcast. To leave a review or rating, go to ratethispodcast.com/RE sessions. You can also subscribe to the podcast at your favorite podcast listening app. Finally, you can go to therealestatesessions.com and subscribe to our email newsletter and be notified whenever a new episode is released.